the truth about your social media following. So one thing, the first question, because the way I usually run these trainings is I run it like a workshop so that you can begin to integrate what we're talking about and you can leverage my time and my experience, right? Because if you just kind of watch this, and again, that's how social media can sometimes be, you just sort of watch this and things kind of go over your head and you're like, oh, well, that's very interesting. But if you actually take this, your precious time and my precious time, and leverage it and allow yourself to really think about the questions that I'm going to ask you, because I'm starting to pull back the curtain of what are the beginning processes. Because what we tend to do is we look at like the big picture or the end result, or we're like, oh my God, we're looking at something out there that's like, wow. And that's a good kind of starting point, because you're like, okay, that's a nice target. But sometimes we don't necessarily think, well, what was the baby step number one? What was the baby step number two? What was the thing that allowed the people that I interact with, that I enjoy interacting with, to, be present and engaging in the way that relates to me? So that's kind of what I want to give you guys today. It's just like, okay, let's start right at the very kind of basic beginnings and understand really what's going on, because again, it's like that big misconception, like if I have a billion jillion followers, then that's how I'm finally going to make money. But they forget, like, well, what happened in between? What happened at the beginning? How does this all work, right? So that's one of the biggest things I'm hearing in this community. So that's why I want to talk about it today. So number one question, I want to hear you in the comments, because this is how it's going to be more integrated for you. What makes people buy on social media? Okay, so write me in the comments, first thing that comes to your head, what makes people buy on social media? So just whatever comes to your head, because the thing is, sometimes we have this sort of these belief systems and we don't even realize that we have them. So like one would be like, oh, because they're so confident. Oh, because they're really popular. Oh, because they're so good at what they do. Right? And that's why people buy things from that person on social media. But I want you to kind of step back and take a moment to think the last thing that you bought on some kind of social media platform, whether it was YouTube, Instagram, something, Facebook, where you're like, you leaned in and you're like, you clicked and you're like, I think this is the thing that is for me. So let me know in the comments what makes people buy on social media. I want to hear your thoughts, and it's good for you to also write them down, because sometimes you don't even realize what it is you think it is, right? So write it down and then we're going to talk about it, okay? So I want to see you in the comments. Somebody write something, because sometimes I can't see the comments on my phone and I don't know if it's actually working or not. So just say hello, tell me you're here, tell me I can see you, so then we can have this, interactive conversation, and I can also adapt this to the people who are actually watching. Okay, so there's a clue. So here, why did you buy what you bought, your last thing that you bought on social media? So let me know, whatever it was. Maybe it was like, ooh, a cool recipe, diet thing, metabolic something, I don't know, marketed something that you bought on social media, pants, I don't know what it was. Why did you buy it? Okay, so answer that question. And number two, in your kind of, again, free flow thoughts, what is the purpose of social media? What's the purpose? Okay, first thing, write it down, because this is important. This process that I'm doing with you right now gets out the subconscious processes, and then sometimes the processes are things, it will show you, it will give you a reflection, whether it's like, maybe there is a kind of tweak or a reframe that I can implement that will create more results in what I'm doing. So write that down, okay? This is part of the process. What is the purpose of the social media, right? What's the purpose of social media, having a social media following, right? So you can like dress nicely and be nice on Instagram or what? Like, what's the purpose, right? So write it down. Number 3, okay? So for all you coaches out there, all you yoga teachers out there, all of you wellness business owners, I want you to seriously answer this question, because this question I think is probably one of the most important ones out of the 3 questions I'm asking you. As a coach, what is the life-altering problem that you solve? And the questions are not meant so that you need to know the right answer. The question is like, right? Because it's going to bring you towards the outcome that you're most likely looking for, right? If you're doing business on social media, what you want is you're looking for, to talk to your peoples about what you do, right? So really important to start to consider, what is the life-altering problem that I solve? And let it be, if you're like, oh God, I don't even know, don't stop there, because that's the other thing we do. It's like, oh my God, okay, Jamie got it figured out. She has a life-altering problem she solves. Oh God, now I can't do it. No, I'm giving you the key, and now you just write the question down. Maybe you know it, maybe you can refine it, or maybe you just need to kind of reflect on it for a bit, right? Because it took me a while, it took me a long time, right? And many different iterations to get to where I am now. And even where I am now might change, because I think the question is also based on what you're going through in the moment and what you've already gone through. So what is it for you now? Like, if there is a life-altering problem that you're constantly pondering on, you're constantly reflecting on, what is that? So answer that in the comments, please. Okay, just a little wardrobe check here. My kimono, want to keep that, keep it PG here. No, okay, so nobody's answering the questions. I don't know if you guys can what do you call it? Can write in the questions, let me know, okay? And anyway, I don't want to mess with my computer too much to see what's going on. So, number 1. So for me, number 1, the question is, to answer the question, what makes people buy on social media is OMG, for me anyway, right? Has been, and again, different iterations, has been OMG, she gets me. Oh my God, she gets it. How does she know that? How does she understand what I'm going through, right? So that's one thing that makes me seriously buy on social media. And number 2, that problem. That's the problem I've been trying to figure out. Oh my God, she has the answers. He has the answers. Oh God, this pro. Yes, Claudia's here. Okay, great. Hey, hello, Claudia. Right? Who else is here? I don't know. But say hello. Okay, so that for me, number 1, and I let me know if this is true for you. When I buy things from a social media, somebody on social media, the first thing that I realize is like, oh my God, she gets it. She gets me, and she has the answer. It looks like she has the answer to my problem. All right? So take these notes down, because for you, it's most likely similar to that. But also, I want you to reflect, well, what is it for you? Right? It's most likely an iteration of that, or I would love to know, like, if there's something else to add to that. But for me, it's like, okay, she's got the goods. She knows what it is that I've gone through, and she gets it. Okay, so there's that. And in my experience, I have bought all kinds of stuff on social media, because my problem at the time was like, okay, this social media thing, this online marketing thing, it seems really powerful, and people seem to be doing like really amazing things. So like, I want in on that action. How does this work? How does these platforms work? So I bought all of these different types of programs, and mostly do-it-yourself programs. So meaning to say, it was like a program that you take, but there was no real like actual human behind it. It was just sort of like these pre-recorded courses, and says, okay, step number 1, do this, and I would do the thing. And then step number 2, do this, and I would do the, so many courses. I've done like, you know, how to become a YouTuber, how to do SEO for your website, how to create an online membership, how, you know, so like I've done a lot of research and testing and, you know, trial and error and mistakes. And all of it has been good because that has informed me to where I am today. But it was always the thing that I would kind of come up against is like I would do the thing. So I'm like, okay, great. Module number 1. Yes. Okay. I'm answering the questions. Oh my God. What's my perfect niche? Oh my God. Okay. That. And I would answer the questions and I'd be all excited. And then I'd be like, okay, you know, yeah, is this, anybody? Is this right? Like, is it, can somebody maybe help me or nuance this for me? And that was the problem with the do-it-yourself programs, where it's like, I have nobody to ask. And when I would ask, like these people had millions of followers, and it's like, I would just be part of the sheep. Like I did, like there was nobody to answer my questions, right? So that was one of the things that for me, it gave me a lot. It was like a lot of those do-it-yourself programs gave me a good outline. So whenever I kind of looked for, let's say, other real human beings to work with, I actually kind of knew a little bit of what was going on, but I still didn't know if I'm actually implementing this in a way that's effective. Because the thing about these things is when you're an expert, and all of you here are experts, you know. And so like I'll give you an example from my perspective. If I'm, you know, I've been practicing yoga for over 25 years, and if you go online, you can go and do like a downward facing dog, no problem. There's like thousands of videos, no problem, right? And you could do it. But then there's nobody to say, okay, well, you know, maybe you need to like retract your right shoulder blade because that, you know, is going to create tension. Maybe you need to draw your hips back. Maybe you need to allow your rib cage to draw in more. Like, you see, so you get the outline, you get the idea, but then when you don't have the expert to actually like look at what you're doing. And that's the beauty of having an actual real life human being. So this, my point is, it brought me to all of this testing. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there's such a thing as like real life coaching who are in the premium space, which from a mindset point of view, you almost think like when you work with experts who are charging a premium, so meaning to say they'll charge 5, 8, 10K, 20K and above, 100K, whatever it is. First of all, you're like, oh my God, like you kind of separate yourself. You're like, whoa, I can't do that because that's not, right? So I'll just kind of like, I'll just buy the $20 programs, the $99 programs, the $2,000 programs, and hopefully that will get me what I need, right? But after years of doing that, right? I would say, I don't know how many years, 7 years of like doing all the do-it-yourself programs, I had a goal. I had an income goal. I had a vision. I know what I wanted, but they weren't matching, right? I was doing all the things, being the good student, and yet they weren't matching. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm a seeker. I'm a researcher, just like you guys. So I don't give up and I just continue. So I started to realize, wait a minute, there are actual humans that can interact with me that have expertise like the way I have expertise with yoga, where they could be like, Jamie, like maybe you need to tweak this in your messaging. Jamie, maybe you need to implement this, not this now, but this first before you do that. Ooh, let me look at this aspect of your business and let's refine that. And let me show you the process that I've developed because I have experience, right? So I started to invest in premium rate programs. So those are like 5-figure investments, could be 10K, could be 20K, could be more than that, right? And the crazy thing at first when you do that, you're freaking the F out because you're like, oh my God, like what is this? Like, I can't believe this. I still have to pay the mortgage. I have to pay, you know, for my kids, like school. I have to pay for the food, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, right? So there's part of you, because it's so much outside of your comfort zone, that it's totally freaking out. But then on the other side of it, you finally, if you find the right coach, right? You finally get those detailed refine answers that meet you where you're at. Where it's like, oh my God, I understand all that, but like I still have problems with this. And then that if you have a coach, an effective coach who has really is aligned with you and has that experience, they can give you the experience, and all of a sudden it's like, even though that investment at the beginning seems like, oh my God, I can't believe this, it's like what it does is it starts to collapse your time frame, where you're not doing this like all these little like kind of like piecemeal solutions and taking like 10 years later to finally get a result. It's like, ooh, that like, you know, that tweak gives you like this massive result. So, you know, working in the premium space, it's different than working for, you know, investing in these like dollar per hour type things, or in things that are do it yourself, right? Because then you have an actual human being, an actual expert, you know, offering you guidance along the way, right? So, you know, and so I start to realize, oh my God, that's what I do anyway. I constantly guiding my students and, you know, meeting them at their pace, and I have this expertise, and you all have your expertise. That's why I asked you at the beginning, what is the life-altering problem you solve? And if you're not sure, write it down and let yourself reflect on this. Even if it takes like a week or 2 weeks or a month, continue to ask yourself that question, and I'll give you a hint. The way you find it is in your own life. For you, what is the life-altering problems? And I'm sure there's more than one that you have overcome. Okay? So what is the life-altering problems that you have overcome? And that means if you were like a before, where you completely, you know, in a place where you know, you could hardly function, you could barely like get out of bed, or you could barely move because of chronic pain, or you were stuck somewhere, and then all of a sudden, or you were in some kind of trauma or some kind of abusive, you know, relationship, and all of a sudden you moved yourself out of that, right? What was that thing? So that's the, you know, that's something you want to start to, you know, look at, and look at the things that you're so drawn to. Like, you know, when you're searching on social media, when you're searching on YouTube, when you're searching and researching, when you're reading books, there is always recurring topics that you are drawn to naturally. So I want you to start to reflect, what are those things? Because again, with social media, we think like, oh my God, it's about like all of these followers, like followers out there. When really, like, what is actually happening, you know, here and now for you, that, you know, that you have all of these, you know, amazing experiences that you're able to share. So think about that, right? And understand that it's not something that you need to go get, right? So when you see other people, other experts doing their thing, it's not because they're doing it because all of a sudden they saw this certificate over here and then that made them like the expert. They saw the coaching certificate and then they made them the expert. Most likely you are naturally a coach, where are naturally a teacher, where you've always done this thing, and people always gravitated to you in a certain way for a certain thing, right? So like for me, every time I taught yoga, there would always be somebody like, Jamie, you know, I think I have anxiety, I think I have depression. And it wasn't because I said, hey guys, I have a certificate in, you know, healing depression and anxiety. No, it's because it's things that I've always been drawn to talking about, right? So think about it for yourself right now. Like, what is the natural thing that you have been drawn to, that you've been working on? What is your journey? What is that healing that you have been so, you know, searching for, that quest? And what is it that naturally, when people, your friends or your students come up to you and say, oh my gosh, Claudia, you know, or, you know, Nancy, like, there's this thing I'm dealing with and I think maybe you can help me, right? So that's the thing I want you to start to see, and I've talked about this before, like the assets you have are already within. So one of the things that I teach my clients is like, I'm not training you so that you can be me. I'm not training you so that all of a sudden you're gonna have like the same tools as me. Yes, I'm gonna give you and show you and integrate and implement those tools with you, but ultimately it's so that you can find your truth, so you can get closer to who you are, so you can get closer to those parts of you, all parts of you, that dark part of you, right, that we all have, and that light part of you, and see how you have created this journey for yourself. So in our program, that's one of the things that I try to teach all of our clients is how to find your own truth, right? And you'll see, I'm even doing it constantly here on these lives. I'm constantly asking questions so that you can find the answer from within, because I can't tell you the answer. You already know it, right? So one of the things that we also do is we start to clear our deep rooted wounds so those answers can become more clear. Okay, so when I'm talking about, like, the first question, what makes people buy on social media? Most likely when somebody's speaking and saying, and that thing I said, like she gets me, is most likely they're speaking from an true, authentic experience. So that creates a very easy resource, a well of resource for you when you show up on social media, because you're really just speaking from your own experience, right? So, and then what we do, what I help you do is I help you distill, like, what exactly is, who is it you're talking to? Because most likely it's a version of yourself that was maybe like a little further back in their journey, right? And what is the problem that you're solving for them? When you can get those two things, then whenever you're showing up on social media, it becomes very clear, right? Because ultimately what's happening is you're continuing to speak on your own truth, on showing up as who you are. And that's much more sustainable than, oh my God, okay, social media, I want to get followers, and maybe I should look like this, and maybe I should do that, and all that, like, and maybe I should talk like that person, and maybe, it's like, but what if, right? Because this is what the spiritual practice is. And the other thing too, guys, social media is simply another way of talking and thinking about it. Is like, imagine you had a podium or a stage, and you're standing on that stage, and maybe there's one person out there, maybe there's two persons out there, but are those two people, can you speak to them from that authentic place, right? And when you speak to them from that place of who you are, and you speak to them from that problem that you solve, right, then those two people are like, oh my God, she gets me, and oh my God, that's the thing that I've been trying to figure out myself. Right? So we want to kind of make it simple when we're thinking about social media, but at the same time we want to create some sort of depth where you're not just like, okay, what should I Google? What what are the 10 steps to blah blah blah? It's like, but what if you actually took the processes from your own experience? So that's another thing I want to teach you guys, is that there are certain processes that work for you, meaning to say, and let me rewind back, where for me, one of my core values is business is human. Okay, business is human. So how are you speaking to the humans, right, in your life? Social media is just this imaginary stage, but you're speaking to people, right? And so what I teach in our program is like, first of all, figure out who you are and what the journey is and what is the life altering, transition that you have made, right? And then number two, the people that you are speaking to, right? Are you speaking to them? Are you speaking to those humans, right? Or are you speaking to like some imaginary number out there from this, you know, this vague sense of who you think you should be, right? And I think that's often when we think of social media, we think of this vague, lofty, big space, when ultimately, if you can't speak to yourself, right, about who you are and what you're about and what it is that you want to, what it is that you want to offer the world, right? What problems that you want to solve for other people, right? If you can't speak to yourself, first of all, about that, how are you going to speak to the one person? How are you going to speak to the two people? How are you going to speak to the 10,000 people that you're imagining is going to make you all this money, right? So in our program, I like to go down to the very, very, very basics of discovering who it is under all of that kind of like trauma and drama and all of these things that have imprinted in you when you were younger, in your physical body, in your mind, in your energy. After all of that, who are you, right? And I know that's like a whoa, right? But the simplicity of the process, it's not an easy process, but the simplicity of the process is that we get you to clear that. Because what happens when you do is that you all probably know this, there's this little still voice in you that speaks and says, oh my God, I want to talk about that. Oh my God, I want to teach that, right? So raise your hand, let me know if you have that voice inside of you that says, and it's maybe not very loud, but it's saying, and then you have all the noise, and then sometimes it gets drowned out by all the past and all the noise and all the trauma and all the, oh my God, I should be doing this and should be doing that, and oh my God, social media, like, right? Raise your hand if there are moments, maybe you're in the shower, maybe you're not even thinking about it, maybe you're just cooking, maybe you're just, scrubbing your floor, maybe you're just sweeping, and all of a sudden you have this idea. And you're like, oh my God, that's what I would love to continue to work on in myself and work on with other people. So let me know in the comments, what is that thing for you? What is that still voice inside of you that says, this is what I want to speak about? So for me, it's always been yoga, but recently the still voice has come into the forefront, has started to become the driver of the bus, where I also want to talk about business. For the longest time, I had a lot of different voices thinking like, oh my God, those two don't match, right? Even external voices, some of my peers in my community are like, no. When you teach yoga, it's not about making money. You need to do this for free, and you need to but my internal voice is like, but that's not my vision. I don't want to just scrape by. I don't want to just barely be able to make my payments. I want to have an abundance so that I have many choices for my family and for me, and I can live where I want and I can travel where I want. And that requires, that requires money, right? So Nancy says, me, recreating your life, self-image, self-concept. Ask for the life you want. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. Yes, right? So that's it. It's like, it's very difficult to know what you want when you haven't cleared all of those kind of unconscious old imprints. But once you do, and that's what we do in our program, once you do, then that still voice starts to come in, and then what I teach you is to continue to bring that still voice into the forefront so you can begin to trust it. Because when you do, you're going to start to see, it's the thing that's guiding me, it's the thing that's leading me. Even though it's scary, even though it's like, oh my God, it's so outside of my comfort zone, you'll start to notice every time I put a little bit more energy and a little bit more energy and a little bit more energy, something starts to happen. And that's the thing, that's another thing, part of the process, is that I also teach you guys how to notice what's working. Okay, because that's the other thing too. Again, when people have created these massive followings that could be very, very successful, we don't think, well, how did they start that? What was the first baby step, right? It started with an idea, and then it started with one step, then 2 steps, and 3 steps, and consistently continue to walk forward, right? So the way we discover that in our program is, one, heal your core wounds. Two, start listening to that voice inside. And then three, start to allow yourself to speak to one person, two people. It doesn't even have to be on social media. Speak to them about what it is that you're working on, right? Hone that skill. And then as you start to present yourself on these stages, on these platforms, right? Because then you're going to get real human feedback, right? And questions. And then as you kind of present yourself on social media, then all of a sudden you're going to see what's working, like in real human being time, right? And you're going to see what's working. And then we start to create a process around what's already working for you. And of course, I help you and I help guide you, but it's not like this, oh my God, do X, Y, Z. Like this is the thing that was for the do-it-yourself programs for me, was like, do these 20 steps and then maybe you're going to have a result. But it's like, what if we took out the complexity and just big hug, gotta go to my commitment. Big hug to go. I am committing with my first week's program. Yes, Claudia. Yeah. So Claudia's in her program, and she's now developed. She's at that stage where she's developing her program, right? But we had to do all this work before that to kind of get that clarity, because there was a lot of voices like, oh my God, can I really do this? Oh my God, right? And now she has some processes to work through that. So the clarity now keeps on coming in. And our work together is me continuing to say, continue to trust, right? Continue to trust, gotta go. I got to go. Okay, great. Okay, before Nancy's comment goes away, I wanna read her. Okay, yes ma'am, so true. I am myself again. You'll also love yourself more, even your past traumas. The clarity comes forward, right? So Nancy is one of our clients, and exactly, it's like at first, when we first started working together, it was a lot of confusion, a lot of doubt, a lot of like wanting to and knowing what to do in business, but it's like, oh, what was that? How come I keep on kind of getting stopped? Why do I keep on getting confused? Why do I keep on getting overwhelmed? It's because that very kind of beginning process, which I would say most business programs don't teach you. They sort of teach you the tactics, which are great, but if you have all of these kind of past unconscious beliefs, they're always going to kind of come into the forefront and confuse you or frustrate you or stop you from what you're doing. And then naturally the answers again are going to come in like a download naturally to tell you, okay, yeah, I want to speak about this. Oh yeah, and now I want to speak about this. And that engagement and that trust starts to give you feedback, right? So when you start to speak about, what it is that you're nerdy about, what it is you're passionate about. So for me, it's yoga and business. Then those people who are also nerdy and passionate about that and are like, oh my God, I don't know how to create like this spiritual practice and create it into a business that actually creates a cash flow. Like, I don't know, I can't put those two things together, right? So those people, as I'm speaking my truth, are like, oh, they perk up. I'm like, I think I need to do that healing thing that you're talking about, because I've been doing all the business stuff and there's something missing there, right? And then as you continue in our 8-week program, what starts to happen is you gain more and more and more clarity and more and more trust, right? And then so from there, the process that I teach you is learning how to trust that and noticing what's working and continue to build the process from there, right? It's like, when you're building something, it's like what do you have to do first? You have to kind of like clear, like let's say you're building a house, you have to clear everything out, right? And then you have to kind of have the idea, and then you have to have the structure, and then you have to do one thing at a time, right? And then you start to notice what's working and what's not. And if you build one house, you know how to build another house. So the process of building a house, right, is the same thing, where it's like, if you don't know the process, you don't know where to start, right? But imagine the process is already within, where you're starting to, okay, I'm going to engage and implement this, and then notice, oh, that worked. And so you create that as part of your process. And then here's the key. This is where a lot of people lose sight and they get dramatic and they're like, oh my God, you know, there was only like 5 people who liked my thing, and oh my God, there was only 2 people on my live, and oh my God, and then you get all dramatic because all of that, you know, like I've been talking about, that drama, that past trauma and drama, starts to cloud your vision, and then you quit. Okay, this is the biggest mistake I see all the time with people who are trying to create something on social media. It's like, and then it's like, or they think it's about the numbers, right? And then, but yet they're missing the biggest part of your business, which is you need the cash flow, right? It doesn't really, you know, otherwise it's just really just a hobby, right? So what you want to start to do, right, is start to notice what's working, right? And then start to build a process around that and continue. And this is where, you know, a lot of people talk about consistency. This is where the consistency comes from. It's not like, oh my God, hustle, keep on doing the thing and post a billion jillion times. It's like, what's working? Let me do that again. What's working? Oh, let me do that again. Versus, oh my God, it's not working because only 5 people said like to my thing. So one of the things I teach you guys is to go deep, not wide. So one of the fundamental things before you go wide and before you expand yourself, you must go deep, right? So if you have 5 people on your live, 2 people on, like I keep on telling this story, I literally had 2 people. And a couple of weeks ago, 2 people on my lives, and that week I made $24,000 in 1 week, right? Why? Because I implemented, right, what was working. My very first live, I got my very first client, and so then I'm like, ooh, okay, let me look exactly what I did in that live. Let me look at, you know, how I was interacting with this person. And so it's like, I remember doing the live, and I remember I meditated before the live. So this is a thing. These are the small details that we sometimes completely overlook because we let the drama and the trauma like overtake us. So I meditated, and what happened? Clarity. So then I wasn't even going to do the live, honestly, but it's like, you know what? Let me just try, right? Let me just try. And I pressed live, and then I started talking about yoga and business, right? And then I had a couple of kind of key points and some questions, and I went through that. And then I asked in the comments, like, you know, DM me if, you know, this is resonating with you. And lo and behold, somebody's like, oh my God, this is super interesting, Jamie. Like, you know, and then we went on to, you know, we went into a conversation in our private message. And then there's a whole process where I give the application, like all of those steps, guys. And this is what I'm going to teach you guys. Like all of those steps count. And then what you want to do is do it again. Yes, it worked with one person, so you do it again. But this is the thing, people get so confused with the numbers, where it's like, oh my God, only one person. But you know, in the premium space, one person can equal 5K, 10K, you know, 20K, whatever it is that you want to charge for your expertise, because ultimately it's your choice. That's the beauty, right? And so what I love about this model is it's so simple, right? But you know, the most challenging part of working in a premium space is the mindset, right? Is clearing our own, you know, wounds. And, you know, what better space as a coach to be in? Because this is their thing that we love to do. We love to, like, you know, work on our own personal growth. So it's a bonus because we're constantly working on our personal growth. So why not let our business allow that process to continue to encourage that, right? And then all of a sudden it's a shift in mindset to that number that you're charging. It especially if you're used to charging your dollar per hour rate, like $100 per hour for whatever it is you charge, to make that leap of like creating an 8-week program for, you know, 5K, 10K, whatever it is you want to do. It's like your brain kind of explodes. You're like, I don't understand this, right? So there's what we work in our program is that our willingness to receive, and what that number represents, because very often unconsciously the number represents a form of greed or a form of, selfishness or a form of something or unworthiness, but when really it's just our willingness to receive, right? So that's one of the things that we work through in our program, because it's such a big leap for a lot of people, especially in the spiritual community, where most of us are taught, like, teach for free, or and that's your payment, and that's great. I'm teaching for free right now, but I also charge a premium. So you see how you can do both, right? So let me see. Eileen says, once again, I'm so grateful that I made the decision to contact Jamie and step into her amazing coaching program. The journey has been incredible, and I love the clarity that came through. I'm looking forward to session 7 tomorrow. Love our combined energy. Right? And this is what Eileen says, one of our clients, so thank you, Eileen, right? Is like, step number 1. I started talking about something, and this is, we joke about this, right? That I'm passionate and nerdy about, right? Step number 2, right? It's like and the thing I think, I don't know if I mentioned, pay attention to those paying attention to you. This is another big problem I see, where it's like, there are 5 human beings, 2 human beings, 1 human being, you talking to yourself, right? Pay attention to those paying attention, right? The biggest mistake I see is there's only 5 human beings. You're telling me that me as one person is not more than enough, right? Pay attention to them, right? Because they're paying attention to you, because they're resonating and aligning with what you're saying. So one of the things that I teach you guys is start to pay attention and start to engage with those people in a way that, again, creates that deep, not wide connection, right? And when they start to see, this is what it is to interact with this coach and with this human being. Oh my gosh, she's an actual person. And often people will ask me questions, they'll be stuck, and it's like, even just in these lives, it's like, oh my God, I had this like this moment of this breakthrough. You just said this one thing, right? And so you want to start to pay attention to those paying attention to you, right? And again, in the premium space, that can equal. So understand, one thing that I came up this word today, understand, I called it potential, understand the potential value of what you're doing, and understand the value. So understand the value, first of all, when you do your own work and start to clear yourself and start to speak from your truth. The step number 1, before anything else, is you need to be able to sell yourself. So if you're speaking, even if you decide to speak to the mirror, even you decide to speak to your phone, right? You're speaking, number 1, you're your first client, right? So if you're thinking, oh my God, I need all of these clients, but if you are not being truthful and honest with yourself, and allowing yourself to be the client, right? Allowing yourself to be like, oh my God, she gets me. Oh my God, that is the problem that I need to solve. If you're not doing that with yourself, right, it's going to be very difficult for you to create a program that somebody else is going to buy if you're not even selling yourself, if that makes sense. If you're not even congruent and aligned with your deep, that deep inner voice, that quiet, still voice that is constantly, so when we talk about aligning the mind, body, and soul, like, that's what we mean. It's like, is your mind, is your body, is aligning with that still voice that constantly is using your vessel as this kind of like tuning fork, right? So let me know, do you guys have any questions? Is this aligning with you? What is it that I'm saying that it's like, oh my gosh, that's the thing? Because in these lives, I might be like blabbing for an hour, but there's usually the one thing that you're like, oh, it could be a lot of things. You're like, oh my God, I'm writing down a lot of notes. And then sometimes it's just like, that's the thing. That's the thing today. And that's the thing I'm going to implement today. Right? So let's recap. Okay. So what did I talk about? I talked about what makes people buy on social media. Right? And then fundamentally, we talked about understanding, it's when people are like, oh my God, she gets me. And then how do we find that? It's like, oh my God, I get me, right? I'm doing the inner work. I'm seeing like my own kind of unconscious limiting beliefs. Okay, and this is the process that created this outcome, right? So know who you are and speak from that authentic place. And then start to see how that is a life-altering problem that you have solved in yourself and you're solving for your clients and other people.